Hi, this is Misha, and it's time to talk about Swiss Arms Neuhausen sand products again. These were formerly imported by JDI, who just changed their company name to Swiss Imports. We've got a few new products to talk about. Here we have a 553-SB pistol, obviously dressed in classy gray and green. Got an extension on it. Have the modern folding and collapsing stock we'll look at. Rail, of course. And this one over here, we have one of their so-called conversion kits. This is a 553-LB upper, which is long barrel. This one, of course, has the diopter sights. It's black. And also featured here is the Swiss Arms manufactured arm brace adapter. And I just stuck a Shockwave on it because frankly it was already on the tube I was using. But I would actually think there are some stocks out there that look very similar to the Swiss. That would be great for this gun. This, by the way, for the rest of the kit, to complete the gun, I just pulled the parts off my 553-SB gun you've seen. Why not? And I also brought out my older Swiss Arms 551-LB, so we can use it as comparison. This is one of the police training guns that was available a few years back. And this has been in other videos, so I just thought I'd bring it because it was nearby. So let's talk about what's new. Well, this year's been a little rocky for Swiss imports because there's been some changes over in the government there, and new people in there. See, not only do we have to get import licenses for things like this to come into the USA, nations like Switzerland insist on having export licenses. And of course, on top of those two things, you also need forms from the ATF, so on and so forth. There's a lot of paperwork, and there's been several paperwork snafus. And here's the fun part. If you apply for a license, and then it comes back approved, but the details, the serial numbers or the parts listed on it are wrong, you basically throw it in the trash and start all over again. But finally this pistol came in. I've had it ordered for a while. Kind of went for a unique look on this. I wanted a 553 to add to the family and make it a complete size. Now I have small, medium, large. But I thought since the 553 is a modern gun, better to go with the rail and the flip-up iron sights. This has little sights here. They're quite low, so they work well with the stock. They're very stable. They don't have a lot of play, very stiff springs. This rear is even adjustable for elevation. This one is adjustable for windage. And you can replace with diopters. You can actually unscrew this and put on a front diopter post. And back here you can just put a clamp-on diopter if you wish, but they're quite pricey. Also, we have an ambidextrous rear sling loop, one on both sides. I thought gray would be neat, just because it kind of matches my other guns. First I was going to do black, but then kind of green came along, and it seemed like a neat look, make it a little more distinctive, so we've got green furniture. Interestingly, to make the 552 and 553 handguards, they've always taken regular 550 handguards and cut them down. That's why there are these indentions here. This would be where the bipod would fold into. And you can see just the beginning here of the vent port. They also come back and drill 5 holes in each side for cooling. To work with this rail, we have a horizontal cocking handle. The original guns had the kind of the 45-degree upswept. These are actually very popular in Switzerland because they're hard to get. They mostly just come on new 553 type guns. but they're starting to make their way. Also, we have a steel lower as opposed to the alloy. I don't mind the alloy, but the steel, I don't know, it's the steel, you know. It's the classic, and it seems to fit a little tighter. Like the upper to lower plays a little better. The stock fits a little tighter. Speaking of the stock, while this was imported as a Pistole, it is ready to have a stock for SBR or Carbine use. Very easy. You just drive out a couple of pins and then remove a plate. Then you can drive in the stock pin for a folding stock. This will lock to the handguard. In addition to being folding, this can also adjust. We have 3 positions, so not a huge adjustment range. I would imagine full in is for people wearing very thick winter clothing or body armor, because there's a very short length of pull, more like a brace. Middle, maybe more for, sorry, it's really stiff. I know, hard to believe that a Swiss gun is stiff when new, huh? Middle is maybe for shorter folks like myself. It's still a little short length of pull, but this gun is meant for kind of urban CQB paratrooper use, so in places where people don't have a lot of length. And full out is actually quite a long length of pull. It's equivalent to the standard stock, which is relatively long on the Swiss guns. Gives you a little adjustment, and I thought since my other guns have the fixed stock, why not go a little different? And finally, our barrel assembly. This has the 8.9-inch barrel. This has the 1 in 7 twist rate. 1 in 10 is also an option. It is threaded 1/2 by 28, so standard, which is great. Comes with just a typical bird cage, but you can unscrew that and do whatever you wish. I kind of lightly pinned on and permanently attached an extension, just a tube to get it out to 16. Actually, it's more like 17 with this, but it's the tube I had nearby that would fit. And that's just until your SBR paperwork comes back, because this just came in yesterday. So it's pretty neat. Still makes it lightweight. We still have the lug down here where a bayonet could go. So this is a pistol turned into a carbine. I just threw on a spare primary arms aim point knockoff. This is one of the newer ones. Nothing special there, but for a little CQB type gun, it's not too heavy, takes pretty standard batteries, got good battery life, and it's me, so yeah. Oops. Stocks aren't, the sights aren't that important, frankly. But need something on there, right? Don't want Jay to have to use iron sights all the time. It's getting old. So, that is one gun that came in. Another option we have is the 553-LB. So I was hoping to get a 553-LB pistol, but this order they didn't send quite enough, so I ended up getting a conversion kit, which is pretty neat. What the conversion kit gets you is a complete upper assembly with barrel, handguards, gas system. All you really need to add is a bolt group, charging handle, lower, and that's it. So you get the upper, all this, barrel. So it's basically, if you have a 5.51 or a 5.50 or even a 5.56, one of the US ones really, with some exceptions, this will just drop on and convert it into a 5.53. They also do 5.53-SB conversion kits and 5.51-SB conversion kits. So what makes the difference between a 5.53-LB and SB is a longer barrel. I know, shocking, huh? Everything's the same till you get out here. Instead of having an 8.9-inch barrel, which is standard on the SB, this has an 11.9. Now there's a few differences. There's 2 different barrel lengths technically on the LB. We have the 11.9 and we have the 13.7. Let's talk about the 11.9 first though, and then I'll explain the other one. We have a thin profile barrel. This hoop or hump here is for a grenade ring. Even has the cutout. Anyone owns a pre-band 5.50, you have this hump but no cutout. We also have the loop here for a bayonet lug, and since the barrel sticks out far enough, you actually can mount a bayonet. This is threaded 1/2 by 28 and comes with this A2 hider as you see here. So the technical length is actually over 13. It's about 13 and a quarter, 13.4, somewhere in there. But they're not counting the flash hider because it's removable. That's how the Swiss do it. I think this is a 303 millimeter barrel. So that's one LB option more for export. Another option, and this is why I brought the old gun out. This is a true LB barrel. More traditional, I should say, not really true. This is 13.7 inch, oh, excuse me. This is the 551, so it's 17.8 total, but the part that sticks out the front is going to have the identical profile. You see their grenade hump here. Bayonet lug here. I did install a NATO lug, so I can put on an M7 or an M9 bayonet. This flash hider is a single piece with the barrel. It's not even like they took a flash hider and permanently pinned it on. No, no, no. This is machined entirely with the barrel. Slots, rings, and if that's not enough, they even internally threaded it for a blank fire device. So talk about, you know, intricate machining. So on a gun like this, with the extra barrel back here, with the longer gas system, we're at 17.8 with this same profile. On the 553-LB, with the 13.7 inch barrel, we replicate this same profile out front. But unfortunately with it, you have a fixed flash hider. There are adapters to let suppressors fit it, but they're kind of hinky. Really, it's just better to get the 11.9 inch where you can just screw whatever you want on. Also, if you were to want to make it into a carbine, it would be much more difficult. As I said, this gives essentially the exact same profile, but since the A2 hider is a little bit shorter, the overall length is a little bit less. The rifled portion of either LB barrel length is identical. The only difference is in the flash hider. The integrated flash hider is just long because it has an extra little section out front for that threading. Kind of interesting. The reason I'm going into detail, these are things that I was extremely curious about when Dave announced doing some 303 millimeter barrels last year, and no one really could answer me what they were going to come in looking like. So I ended up going ahead and buying this conversion kit, even though I wanted a full gun. I was just too damn curious. This one's also kind of unique in that it has the diopter sights, which is kind of cool. I mean, with the longer barrel, the diopters are kind of attractive, frankly. I think so. So we have those options. And if you don't want to put on an extension, like this gun here, you could put on a brace. I was actually thinking about kind of engineering some braces using kind of cut off stocks and things, but then Swiss Arms just sent over some. And this is a really neat, simple to use brace. Obviously it takes standard AR-15 buffer tubes. It's made of metal. Uses the exact same hinge over here. We have the exact same push button as you'd find on a stock. Boop. Folds to the side. The only thing you don't get is, of course, a way to latch this in to the handguard. Not unless you get some kind of brace that has something kind of compatible with that nubbin. So when your brace is folded over, it's going to be kind of loose. The reason it's springing out is it's hitting the takedown pins. If I flipped them over to the other side, it would fit a little closer, but still good for storage, and still you're using the hinge, so great. And these brace adapters are surprisingly not terribly expensive for being Swiss and kind of a custom part for the US market. I like that they're doing it too, because it shows they care. I mean, they're making parts specifically for us now, and they're threading 1/2 by 28 basically for us. So that does show an investment in our market. So hopefully better things will come. These braces, they actually have two versions, or these adapters I should say, for the brace. They have two versions, one for the alloy lower, one for the steel lower, and I was kind of curious why. I know now. On the alloy lower, this cutout is a little thicker, a little wider, a little deeper for the stock latch. So this brace adapter is for a stamp stock, a stamp blower I should say. It fits, but it has a little play. it still locks. It's not going to fold on. It's got a millimeter worth of play. Not much, but a little bit. Swiss being Swiss, they don't like that, so they make a specific, slightly wider latched version for this alloy lower that locks in tight. So you can use the stamped adapter on either stamped or alloy lower, but I suspect if you had a alloy only adapter and you try to put it on a stamped lower, it would be too thick. I suspect this would be too thick right here and would either lock in very tight on the steel lower or just not at all. So looks like they're only one-way compatible. And again, like I said, it has a little play, so just FYI. Although when you're shooting, when you shoulder it, you really don't notice. And of course, we're talking about a brace after all, and most of them have play. So this is the longer barrel version. It's really neat. The Swiss military uses the 553. They designate it as the STGW 0407. I believe the original STGW 04 was a 552, but they don't use those anymore because those guns experienced some issues. So all the 552s that they had, as far as I know, were retired out and retrofitted into 553s and became 0407s. They're used by their airborne special units, MPs, things like that. People needing a small, much lighter weight weapon. Keep in mind, standard STGW 90 has a 21-inch barrel. It is pretty dang heavy with a long gas system and bipod and all that. So this is much shorter, either one. They kind of go with the long barrel version because it still gives them bayonet and grenade functionality, and also just a little better range and velocity and accuracy with the longer rifling of the 11.9-inch barrel. Even if they have the integrated flash hider, that's still what it cooks up to be. Whereas this, as I said, is a 8.9. So if we were to put a flash hider on it, it would be between 11 and 12 inches, depending on how long our 10 and 11 inches, depending on how long our flash hider was. It's kind of interesting. I'm curious, does anyone know if the Swiss use the SB at all? You would think they would have kind of both for when they really needed to go commando. These short barrels run incredibly reliably. They do have a shorter gas system. That's the shortest system of them all. They even have a fluted piston here that's thinner and fluted to save on weight. It's not what I'd call a light gun, but it is significantly lighter than its brethren in the same series. So if anyone knows about the STGW 04 or 0407 in the Swiss military, we'd love to hear about it in the comments, because you just can't find much info about these guns on there. But they do use them. In addition to Switzerland, while no one else really adopted the 550 family as its primary standard issue, gonna buy them by the hundreds of thousands guns, lots of militaries and police agencies around the world have purchased them in hundreds, if not thousands. And they're really scattered all over the globe. This series has seen combat from the Arctic environments, which was originally designed for, to the desert environments. For example, Egypt and Saudi Arabia issue it. It's also been used a lot in the Far East by places like Indonesia and Taiwan. And even in the USA, a few law enforcement agencies and the FBI and so on and so forth have issued these in some numbers. So they have definitely seen issuance around the world, and generally speaking have a very good reputation. They are very reliable, quite durable, and just, you know, there's a certain aesthetic, a certain charm to being Swiss, I have to admit. Kind of like the same thing with HK. Even if SAN and HK don't necessarily make the absolute best firearms on the planet, they have a certain mystique to them that's just hard to deny. Hence is why me and many other people end up with several of these critters. They're just too interesting. And to be fair, for a very long time you couldn't get them. Back in the 80s, a few hundred, 400 or 500 original 550s came in, the long barrel 21-incher. Only a few carbines similar to this came in, probably under 100. They only started to come in right when the ban came through in '89. These 5.51 carbines brought in the 80s would have a kind of intermediate barrel. It would be shorter than this because this is a 17.8 with flash hider. They would be more like a 16. Whereas the standard 5.51, I guess you could call it an SB, has a 14.3 inch barrel, and that counts the flash hider. So the American commercial ones were kind of right in the middle between an LB and an SB. But those all disappeared. In the 90s, we didn't see much. There were a few 5.50s post-ban brought in by DSA. They would have a thumbhole stock, no muzzle device. And there were a few guns brought over in like kit form, kind of similar to the Argentinian FALs, you know, where you have the upper sold by one company, the lower and the bolt sold by someone else. And of course, there were guns like this brought in for police. This was Louisiana Wildlife Fish and Game. It seems like they had a couple of hundred, maybe 300. And there were those guns, those 5.52 Commandos, sold by Midwest several years ago. And those were really the only civilian legal 5.52 Commandos, because the 5.52 was only in production for about 10 years total before it was completely phased out in favor of the 5.53. They found some issues with the 5.52. I think it would be neat to have one, but for what the guns go for, I'm not going to pay the money knowing the gun has a potential intrinsic flaw. Not when there's brand new 5.53s that I know the history of and cost less money. The 5.53 started to come in first through M&M, Colorado Gun Sales, then Sig Sauer up in Exeter, USA, imported some, and then they kind of dried up for a couple of years. Then JDI, now named Swiss Imports, took over. And what Dave is doing down in Texas there is pretty neat. He's importing guns, of course, as best he can, but he actually has a form you can fill out where you can custom specify what you'd like. You can specify 1 in 7 or 1 in 10 twist barrel. You can specify SB or LB, and you can specify a single piece barrel, meaning fixed flash hider, or removable two-piece barrel, meaning, you know, half by 28 threads, removable. You can pick the color of your furniture, black or green. You can pick the color of the metal. Normally it's just black or gray, but they do have some other special colors like flat dark earth. There's another shade of black, and there's another shade of gray called heavy metal. And there, of course, you can specify diopter sights or the rail with the folding sights. Now, I will say on that one, the diopters cost about $200 more. So, just so you know. Finally, you can specify alloy, which would be a machined lower, like on that one over there, or steel, stamped steel, which is welded together. So more traditional style as this one here. So quite a few little options that are pretty neat. It will be very interesting to see how collectors in 10, 20 years feel about this. You know, who knows how many will actually come in before a situation changes. So, yeah, who knows. But it's always fun to talk about these Swiss guns. And if you enjoy them, and I didn't bore you to tears in this video, please click on the playlist, and we have several other videos talking about the history, the full-size variants, and some other stuff from JDI, Swiss Imports. Some older stuff too. So yeah, check that out if you would, if it interests you. Well, as always, we appreciate you tuning in. And if you too have ordered a 5.53 from Dave, and we'd love to hear which configuration you chose and if you've received it and how you like it. I think it would be fun to kind of start a database of what people have ordered, received, and that way we can kind of keep account for posterity of what was imported in this series. How's that sound? I think that would be really fun. So yeah, if that sounds like a good idea, please contribute below. And if you have any other questions, we'll do our best to answer them. And if you'd like to help support us get to the range a little more often, because these guns, they would prefer steak and caviar, trust me, over fish sticks and hamburgers. So nice steel, you know, or excuse me, brass ammo is always preferred over steel. If you'd like to help support us, please click on the link and check out our Patreon page. Oops, if I can do it right. It kind of locks in, as you see. You can still charge it, although it's a little hard to do with that in the way. That's why the original was upswept. Nice triggers on these, by the way. Anyway, this is Misha, and we'll catch you next time.